My name is Jen Kemperworth, and I help handle the education and community engagement work at the Hult Center. And today we are talking with Theresa Sizemore, who is the general manager at the Hult Center. Thank you so much for doing this, Theresa. We're excited to talk with you today.
My pleasure.
So we're going to run through a list of questions, and then if there are any extra questions, we'll just have folks write them in the Q&A section or the chat, and I'll get those at the end. So we can kind of dive right in and just to hear about the work that you do, Theresa. And I know it is a lot. So can you give us an overview of what your day-to-day looks like? What are your daily tasks? What sort of special projects do you get to work on?
Well, when you get to the GM executive director level, you spend a lot of time in meetings. I have direct reports that I meet with. I have committees that I oversee, and I also participate with the city on other committees as well. So, and also have colleagues across the nation that I meet with on different things that are in the performing arts. So you do spend a lot of time in meetings. A lot of times reviewing planning, reviewing processes, doing approvals, different types of approvals for new programs or things like that, working through things with staff, as they need to, coaching staff, and just spending time also out in the community as a representative of the center. So not as much, doing task-oriented things as kind of staying at that 30,000-foot view of how to run the center.
So then, as you know, having the high view of the center, how much involvement do you have when it comes to, I know we've talked with Vicki, our director of programming, or Jeff, our director of facility theater operations. So how much involvement do you have with the different folks at the Hult Center? Yeah,
so I consider there's different people in different sections, and they're my experts. Okay, so you have Jeff Weinkoff, who is the director of theater operations, and he's my expert in tech and theater in the facility. Vicki Infinito is my expert in programming and booking. Adam DeVries is my expert in ticketing. So I spend time working with them. It's kind of a coach and direct, guiding them with what it is that they wanted to do, but make sure they have the tools and the necessary means to put forward whatever they need to in their programs. Sometimes there comes a time when it's like an ask, can we do this, or should we do this? So we have a lot of discussion on programming, on where we want to go with the center and why, and on if we're going to acquire new equipment or do some types of new programs with our theaters or with our organizations. So we work together a lot, but I do depend on them to be my experts, because I can't be an expert in everything. So I'm very fortunate to have a team that I can work with on a consistent basis that does such a stellar job. It's hard sometimes, because when you come up through the ranks, you're so accustomed to being in the nitty-gritty of the everyday and the nitty-gritty of the events. And then once you reach a different level, that's not what you do anymore. So yeah, every once in a while when you get your fingers in the nitty-gritty, it's a lot of fun. But it's also, it's not your place to be anymore. So yeah, it's a lot of guidance and a lot of listening to where these individuals want to take their programs, and a lot of listening to the public and to our organizations, and then making the decisions. So, I'm a decider here as to how we move forward and what we're going to do, but I also take decisions from my leadership that's above me as well. So I always think that it's kind of like there's the leadership at the city funnels to me and then back out to my team. Like I'm at that pinch point of that hourglass a little bit.
Yeah, and that's so interesting. And I don't know if you could speak to how that would compare to a performing arts center that isn't city run. I mean,
Sure, yeah. So it is a little bit different. Most performing arts centers are nonprofits. They're a 501c3. Occasionally, there are those that are for-profits. But there's not a ton that are municipally owned or county owned or state owned. And so the difference is with a nonprofit, you're going to have a president and CEO, and they're going to answer to a board, right?
mhm.
And with an entity like us, we're owned by a government, we answer to a department head, to a city manager, to a city council. So it's just a little bit different. We function both as an industry and as a government entity. And so it's kind of it's a little bit of an anomaly and different than a lot of places, but it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess in both situations, you're still answering to whether it's the board or city council. And so you have
Right.
other input.
You have other input, and we have other input through the Cultural Services Advisory Committee, which is advisory to our department head. So that's also another place where we bounce things off of or get input on big decisions, especially decisions that may impact our users or our patrons. So those are important to bounce off of people. And on that other side is we have to follow whatever government says that we need to do in order to
Yeah.
conduct business. So that's through purchasing rules, that's through administrative orders, all of those things that are required of government entities, we still have to participate in. 501c3s, it's a little bit different for them. They have a little bit more freedom and leeway in that respect. So
It seems like, well, obviously there's a lot of moving parts and that you're at this high level and there's a lot of action things going on. So what would you say is your favorite part of your job? Like, what do you love the most about what you get to do?
people. Absolutely love the most is working with people. I get to work with different people all the time. I adore my staff. They're wonderful. And that's, that's your base level of enjoyment. You got to enjoy the people that you're going to spend all your time with every day. And that's huge. The people, the patrons that come in and really bringing joy. When you stand at an event and people walk out and they're thrilled, that's just like, yeah, we're doing our job. We got it, So it really is about, it's about the people and that can go all the way to the performers and our organizations that we represent. Is just at this level, you really got to enjoy working with people. It's so important.
That's what I was going to just say, like, because so much of it is at this high level and like you said, working with your staff that have their specialties, but then also attending these meetings with the city, it seems like you have to be a people person to.
You have to enjoy people. You have to want to build relationships and tend to relationships. And that has really come out with the pandemic about how important the relationships are and how important it is that we advocate for each other and understand each other. I tend to be working with in relationship with people that I never thought of before. And it's been a pleasure to actually get to know them deeper and work with them. And as we come out the other side, I just see that becoming a more healthy way to work with individuals and just builds upon what the center can do with its relationships as well. So yeah, you gotta like those relationships and the people make it. The people make business. This isn't a business of widgets or things or anything like that. This is a business of people. And so, yeah.
So then on the flip side, what is the most challenging part of your job?
I would say the most challenging part is that we run as an industry, right, as a business, and then we operate as a government entity. And sometimes that doesn't always mesh in timing or in speed of meeting something. Don't get me wrong, we have tremendous support from City of Eugene for the work that we do. But sometimes when we want to be super duper nimble you can't always do that because that's not how it works within the government for the requirements that we have to do. So those are challenging times sometimes. It's not that you can't get past it. It's not that you don't get solutions, but sometimes it's just a little harder to work through towards those solutions. And I will always say the best part of your job is people, and the most challenging job is people, right? So
Yeah.
you're always working with different personalities, and it can be, a personality that's a patron that doesn't like something. It can be somebody you're trying to negotiate with, if you're negotiating with agents or, other groups. So people can be challenging and people can be wonderful. So it's both, right? So yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. People are dynamic, and like you said, you're dealing with all sorts of different personalities on so many different levels. So that makes a lot of sense that it's both the best and can be the challenging part.
It can be challenging. Usually by the time a patron gets to me, they've been, they're done. They want to, just emote if there's something wrong. I also get wonderful calls and things from patrons as well. But it's really trying to work through some of these challenges, and especially if sometimes you can't provide an answer, right?
Yeah.
And that's really difficult too. And you try to have that empathy for the other individuals, but it's you're in a people business, and people both are the thrill and the challenge too. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it is always interesting and to hear about that and how you work with all the different people, the public, the staff. So my next question, oh, sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say another challenge that I think about is that people don't exactly understand how the business works.
Yeah.
Right? How the business works, how timing works, how deals work with artists. And somebody will say, well, why can't you go get this artist? Or I'd like to see Paul McCartney. And it's like, oh, I would too.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how that works, right? And so we don't always have an opportunity to explain how the business works, but when we do, that's important too, that people come to understand that. But most of the time, we don't want anybody to understand how the sausage is made. We just want them to go in and enjoy the sausage, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Experience the magic, like without all the work behind it.
Nope, we don't want you to have to deal with that. We want you to just experience it and enjoy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I do think that performing arts are like sort of magical. And so sometimes I think people are like, yeah, just bring in this artist.
Yeah, we want it to seem seamless, like it just went on the stage and it's fantastic and easy, and it's a great experience coming in all the way until you get back home. Yeah, but so much goes into it that people don't ever know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a really good point for sure. So my next question is talking about what the average salary is for a general manager of a performing arts center, which I know can vary wildly, like depending if you're in a big city or a small town. But if you're able to provide a range, I think that's really helpful for students to kind of get an idea if that's the pathway that they'd like to take.
So generally the range is about 100,000 to 400,000, depending on where you are and what size your facility is. Think about the size of the Hult Center compared to the Lincoln Center or Kennedy Center or some of the larger centers. So it just depends on the size and the makeup. If you work within a government institution, then you are you follow the government salary schedules, right? And so those are set within a budget, and you usually don't veer from those. So outside of a government institution, there could be different things like bonus or different salary arrangements that can be made. On the other side, there's benefits that come, that make up for a lot of salary, because working within the municipality, we have wonderful benefits as well. So it just varies depending on where you are, the size of the center, and whether or not your center is a rental house Is your center presenting, and are they programming, and how many staff do you have? All of these things that make up what a CEO or president or executive director or GM has to do, right?
I was just going to ask, so like when you see like a executive director of a performing arts center, those are all the same similar positions.
Yeah, they're all usually we'll just refer to them as EDs, executive directors, but depending on the nomenclature for what the organization is, president and CEO is very common. Executive director is very common. GM for performing arts centers, not as common, but it works within the city's nomenclature. But I would be known out there in the arts world as an executive director.
Yeah, that is helpful to know the different terminology. And obviously, you don't usually just go out into the world and become an executive director. So that leads me to my next question of, walk us through your pathway. How did you get to where you are right now?
So my pathway, oh my gosh, let's see. I graduated in piano performance and theory, and so was always into music and taught in my own studio. I actually worked for a nonprofit and professional affairs, actually a medical association, so different from the arts. But
what did you say? What kind of association?
For the Washington State Medical Association.
Oh, medical. Oh, okay.
I was with them for 5 years in professional affairs and their education program. So learned really well how a nonprofit works and a professional membership organization works. Did some time with the city here in budget land, and so really learns government finance.
Yeah.
So that was quite something. And then I moved here and was teaching in my own studio, and I actually tuned pianos too. And took a part-time job assisting the cultural services director. And when you assist, and Jen, you would know this, you've got your fingers in every little piece of what's happening at the center. Moved to become the booking manager, which that role is in relationship with every manager in the center, and also every user of the center, the agents, the promoters, all our local folks. So you hold a lot of relationships and a lot of knowledge of what's happening with the center and where it's going. And from there became the GM. So there's a lot of different pathways that people take to come up through. Some people get theater degrees, and they go into theater operations, and they come up through that vein. Some people come out of like HR and finance. So like you'll have CFOs that then become CEOs. And some people come out of more the program and marketing area. So those are pretty common paths. There are degrees in arts administration that people can get. There is no degree and no program to learn how to book, right? That is by the seat of your pants, grow up in an organization. There's no degree in becoming a ticket office manager. There's no degree in becoming a front of house manager. So truthfully, there's degrees in marketing, but a lot of this is holding, business acumen. And so I'd always advise people, if they say, I want to go into performing arts management, get a business degree. And if you're going to get another degree, get your MBA and go into management, if that's what you want to do. But a lot of it is people actually come into these programs and love it. And so then find their way and grow. It's one of the programs that you can possibly not be degreed, in technical operations or something like that, but have skill and move through and come up through the ranks. So
it's been really interesting doing these conversations, because everybody kind of has this unique pathway that they didn't necessarily start out thinking, oh, I'm going to be the general manager at the Hult Center. And it's been
Yeah.
really interesting, and I think it's really helpful to hear as like
Yeah.
as somebody that's maybe starting out and thinking about it. It's like you don't necessarily need to have that pathway figured out. And how many positions, like you mentioned, you don't need a higher degree. Like obviously it can help, but that there are other ways to get into the industry.
Yeah, we have, you know, individuals that come in from the other side, that come in from the production side. So their production for an organization is touring, or the individuals come agent side or something like that. If you'd have told me, you know, when the center opened, it was my freshman year in college. And if you'd have told me then that I was going to run this place, I'd have thought you were just nuts, you know. I had other things in mind, but you know, it grows on you, being able to do this work, and you see how important it is to the community and to the people that walk through the doors, and that's a huge heart piece for anybody that is in this business. And if we're doing it right, it's not like a day's work; it's a day's joy, you know. Sometimes it's a day's work. Sometimes I'll say, you know, they don't pay me enough to do this. And sometimes they say, I can't believe I get paid to do this, right? So.
And that's been like also it's been really wonderful talking with everybody that works at the Hult, because I think everybody's kind of said that, is that there is so much joy in this work and being able to help create these experiences for people. And of course there are days that it's work, but it's that passion and that interest, it seems to be a driving factor for most people that work at the Hult.
It's a spirit. It's a spirit of the arts. It's a spirit of community, you know. And when you can be in community with the people coming in, and experience that, there's just nothing better. You know, we're crazy in a lot of ways, you know. So,
which is good.
Yeah, it's a good thing. But
so I know that was that.
You said there's numerous paths that people.
Yeah, well, and so that was my next question, was that, you know, like you don't necessarily need to go to college, but having a business degree, you mentioned, is what you would recommend. What other pieces of advice do you have, or like, just pieces of advice on how to get into the industry? If somebody wants to get started.
If someone wants to get started, you know, start out, volunteer. If you can, go volunteer and learn what the organization is. Do informational interviews. Become an usher or something like that, so that you understand what happens the night of show. Work within, say, another organization that is presenting or producing, you know, start there. There's numerous positions, whether they're at a coordinator level or administrative level, or you know, stagehand level, or any of these things, and start in these places. Not that stagehands are starter jobs, because they're not. It's so important that they're we have experienced folks, but one has to start somewhere. Take theater in high school, right? Do those things so you understand how a theater works. And from there, you know, learn how to hone your skills at relationships. This business is all about relationships, who you know, who you can talk to, who you can collaborate with, and learn to be collaborative. And you know, listen intensely, learn to do that, and be able to learn to do a 360 for what's going on all around you. You know, that alertness and that curiosity, it matters a lot in this job. So yeah,
absolutely. And I know that you mentioned that you work nationally with different groups. Are there any like organizations that you would recommend, that if somebody's interested in getting the field, to look into different organizations or groups nationally?
So there's like International Association of Venue Managers. So that has a lot of information and a lot of different types of participation. universities have internships, right? So if you're at a university, you're going to school, you're doing marketing, you're doing business. If there's a performing arts center in wherever you are, go see if they have internships for you. It'll be an experience like none other, right? You will get to do things that you never thought you would get to do. So find those places. If there's a symphony, if there's a ballet, if there's an agency that's promoting, go see what they got. Go see what you can find with those organizations. There's arts presenters. There's, gosh, all the way to Broadway. You know, there's different organizations that want to bring up the next generation of individuals in this business. You know, and we always want to green the business. You know, bring in the young that are going to take the business to the next level. So yeah, be curious about what's out there, but there's a ton of performing arts organizations. There's also for-profit theaters too that you can go and work with, and sometimes work with easier in a different way. So there's just a lot out there.
Yeah, I know it's really helpful sometimes to think of the broad big picture and the different ways that you can kind of get into the work and learn about what it is that we do.
Yeah. I always say, you know, people, you know, look at performance and they always think of performance as this, but the world of performance is this big, right? And
absolutely,
so many ways to get into it, and be open. And you know, you go in one spot. If another spot looks good, find out how you can get there. You know, always ask the questions and learn.
Yeah, I think like one of the things that you mentioned that I think is such a helpful thing is just having informational chats with people, because I do find that most people are very open to talking about it. And
yeah, and let people know you're hungry. You know, I think about the people that have promoted up through, and I've never met a staff member who was hungry that didn't get promoted. Right? They were hungry and wanting to go and wanting to find ways of adding to their education or adding to their experience. So being hungry and letting people know that you're hungry,
yeah,
that you want to do more, that you want to grow and expand is really important.
absolutely.
And there's so many different, you know, different avenues you can go to in the Performing Arts Center. You can go in food and beverage. You know,
yeah, we talked to Lee, and that was super fun and very interesting to hear all about that world. And
yeah,
it is one of those things that like sometimes you just don't think about these positions being at a performing arts center, but they're all integral to to how we operate, which is really fascinating.
Or even a security position that you don't, you know, there's security personnel. There's just so many different facets in centers and layers too. So
absolutely. And so if anyone has any questions, we can drop those into the chat. But I know that my next question, you talk about a lot of kind of overseeing processes or anything like changes. What has been your favorite what's been your favorite thing that you've accomplished as GM of the Hult Center?
Oh gosh. I would say as GM, when we brought back programming and had just for 5 years some wonderful exponential growth and being able to create new relationships into the community and new pathways into the center, I'd say that has probably been you know, one of the best things that I feel like I've done or I've spearheaded or brought along as GM. Other things, you know, I actually construction projects of the gallery and the kitchen and the work areas and getting through all of that and changing that so our food and beverage department could become a true revenue generator. So that was a big deal. And that was a course of, you know, kind of making lemonade out of lemons because we had an issue within the center and had to remediate and found ways to expand some things. So, you know, every day is a new horizon and something new to accomplish. But I'd say, you know, pre-pandemic, those were, that was the accomplishment, is actually the amount of growth that we had seen with our presenting.
Which is tremendous. I mean, those are huge things to have accomplished in the amount of time that you did, which is amazing.
And that's what you have your experts on staff that help to build, right? And so, yes, while I led it, I didn't have my fingers in the nitty gritty all the time. So, yeah, it had some outstanding staff working on
that. So as we exit the pandemic, do you have specific, I know that things are always changing, but goals for the Hult Center as we kind of get back to gathering again?
Yeah, so we had established a business plan, a new business model for the center, and we're just set to pull the trigger starting in fiscal year 21, which was July of 2020. And of course, the pandemic came and shut us down. So going into our new fiscal year, we're contracted with a talent buyer aside from our programmer. So our talent buyer is contracted to bring in more popular commercial type shows, which is really important. That's a lot of our community wants to see that. Those shows generate revenue, which help us turn around and be able to afford the programs that are more art-centered programs that we think the community should be able to see, but they'd have to go to New York or Los Angeles or something. Helps us avoid education programs, those type of things. And just helps us all the way around the facility to support the local operations of organizations. So that's important, and I'm excited about that coming out of the pandemic. And also, as we come out of the pandemic, we will emerge in the next year as a 50-50 with our Broadway promoter, and then take Broadway ourselves and presenting it ourselves, which is huge for us. It's a huge step. It's a wonderful step. We've had a great partnership, but it's time for the Hult Center to take that, because it can bring so much more to the community through education and through access. And so these are really important things. And also beginning to build that education and engagement program, which is huge. There's no performing arts center worth the salt that does not have a good education and engagement program. And it's been absent from the center, and it's time to change that. And then finally, we're going to get ready to embark on a strategic facilities plan. So we can plan for the next, we're going to be 40 in September of 22. And so we can plan for the next 40 years, or 10 years, or 20 years, but we can plan for that next rendition of what the Hult Center is going to be. And so I look at it that as we come out of the pandemic, that we will be more entangled with our community, good entanglement, right? More responsive, to our community with our engagement, and be the place where the community comes to heal. Arts is a second responder when it comes to the pandemic. This is a place where they're gonna come back and laugh. They're gonna come back and cry, and they're gonna come back and experience with other people. And so I'm excited about that, of being that place for our community. So,
I love that idea of being second responders, because it's so true. Like, that's how we heal as a community, is coming together and being able to have these experiences together. And I think that's a very beautiful way of looking at it.
Well, when you think about when the United States has had to go through very difficult times, they were never shut down for gathering. So arts always came through, whether it was somebody bringing cartoons or comedy or something forward, or attending a show where you could sit in the dark with people and still cry or laugh your guts out. So I think that gathering point and experience with other people is going to be so important in just healing that wound and that divide too. So I think it's going to be really important. So I am looking forward to that. And
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there are amazing things to come and look forward to, like rattling off that list that you just went through. I mean, those are all huge, which is really exciting, and to be able to kind of have all these projects to look forward to. It's
wonderful. And the one I'm also looking forward to is that being able to go out for more volunteers and pulling more volunteers under Hult Center auspices so we can welcome more community members to serve at the center. That's a big one too. I'm excited about that, about creating this new culture here.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the last question, and I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but what are some of your favorite performances or events that you have been a part of at the hall or even seen at the hall? Because I know you mentioned it opened when you were in college, so I'm sure you've gotten to experience a lot. But.
So when I was in college, I had to do a thesis for my bachelor's, and I had to do a recital, and I had to do a lecture. And so I was doing that with Thelonious Monk, and and he was in Paramount in the Bebop era, and Ella Fitzgerald came to town, and so I got to interview her after the show. So I was given tickets, and then my advisor arranged for me somehow. Some wonderful person here at the Hult Center found a way for me to be able to talk to Ella Fitzgerald, and I got to interview her for an hour after the show.
Whoa! Just you two?
Huh?
Just you and her?
Me and her, and a friend came with me who just sat in the corner and watched, and took some notes. But it was the most amazing, humbling, lovely experiences I've had here, because she was such a gracious, beautiful, gracious human being, and wanted to share so much and answer any question. And even when the hour was up, and somebody gave me a nod, like, you need to go.
Wrap it up.
She would stop me and say, have I answered all your questions? Have I answered, and it was just such a wonderful experience. And it really sat with me, the humble part, and that you're here to help people. And so that has always been with me. I've seen so many wonderful performances here. The latest concert I saw, the David Byrne concert, that was just phenomenal. It was just phenomenal. It hit every front. Or, if you look at something like Lion King, the production value of something that hits every front, where, you come in and you go, oh, wow, this really is truly amazing. And then there was a concert that I saw. It wasn't a concert, excuse me. It was Cinderella, Broadway's Cinderella. And at the end, there was this man coming out, and he was probably 6'4", and he was like walking on air. It was like, that was the greatest thing I've ever seen. This guy was like floating out of the theater over Cinderella. And so it's those moments that are, just kind of my favorite moments. But there's been so many concerts and so many performances over 17 years. It's like, I can't even remember them all.
But that's amazing, though, that like one of your highlights was from early on when the venue opened, and wow, what a special moment. That's really cool.
4 years into the venue, and it really did influence me on why the performances were important and what they can do for people and how they can change people's lives. We don't save lives by any means, but we sure as heck can change them.
Absolutely.
So it's been wonderful stuff.
That's so special. Thank you so much. It's really wonderful to hear all about that, and to hear everything you do. And we obviously work together, but to hear your pathway and everything, it's been really wonderful to learn about our staff and our community. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this conversation.
Good gig. It's a good gig. I highly recommend it.
Awesome. Well,
Not for
thanks.
anybody else right now because it's mine. But
Yeah.
yeah, highly recommend it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Theresa. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for doing this.
Okay. Bye.
See you. Bye.